G'day everyone, welcome back. Well, if this is your first time joining us, my name's Tim, and it's been that long since I put a video up that you've probably forgotten my name anyway, so reiterate. Right, this time we're going to start off like, I don't know, quite a few of my videos have. We're going to start off with an engine build. Now, it's a little bit of a story about how we got to this point. But I'll do my best to keep it short just to get everyone updated, and then we're going to crack on and hopefully get this engine together today. Would be really nice, and I'll talk about where it's going and why it's going there and how we're putting it there. So yeah, strap in and let's get moving. Alright, well first off, if you saw the last episode on my other channel, Harper's Boat Shed, you'll know that I sort of made a decision to stop making videos pretty much, and yeah, I sort of haven't made one since. That was a couple of months ago, but here we are. Now, I mean, just for those who are watching, work on the boat has still progressed, and I will do an update video and put it on that channel. I think the long and short of it is I missed making videos, so I'm going to make more time for it and get back into it. I think I'm going to have to treat it a little bit differently, I think, though. So stop trying to treat it as some magical way to make money and everyone will be happy. I think I might just do it because I enjoy it. So, and if you enjoy it too, then brilliant. Everyone wins. Right. This channel, though, is all about working in the shed and everything to do with cars and boats and, you know, no, not boats. That's what the other channel's for. Cars and bikes and racing lawnmowers and gyros over there. And yeah, if you've been watching the channel for any length of time, you'll know that a few times there's been Dad's two-seat gyro in the background. Well, it doesn't look like it did. That's going to become another video. I'm going to do a video on that just so people can follow along. Alright, now, this engine that we're building today is a 6.5 GM diesel. Now, there's a few different variations of these, but effectively, you know, 6.5 litre, which is, I'm pretty sure they're a 392 cubic inch V8 diesel. Pardon me. This variant that I have is actually, let's turn that light off, that might be doing stuff. There we go. This variant that I have is actually an optimizer, so it's a later model block. Not the very best of the best, but it's still better than some of the older blocks. So this, if you saw the last episode on this channel, which was a while ago, I have a GQ Patrol, which is outside in the rain at the moment, that had a RB30 straight 6 3 litre Nissan engine, petrol in it. And anyway, long story short, we had quite a few issues with that engine, and I decided to rip it out. And I've had this 6.5 for quite some time, so I thought, bugger it, we're gonna put it in something. Let's put it in the Patrol, and I did. And then fired it up, and I got a couple of clips on my phone of it running, actually in the engine bay running. Wasn't healthy, had copious amounts of blow by, and actually in one of the shots it blows smoke rings, so out of the top of the breather cap, crankcase pressure, all crankcase pressure, it was actually popping smoke rings. So anyway, I'll put a clip up of that. Because of the blow-by, we decided to do a compression test, and I'll also put up a photo of the numbers we got. Essentially, you know, you can see from that that 2 of the holes are well and truly down. That's 3 and 7. Let me show you why number 3 is down. What did I do there? Yeah, anyway, so basically, this is number 3 piston. Let's turn that light back on there. And she's got a big old crack, or not all the way across, but you know, almost. So from that side to that side of the valve relief, she's cracked. Now, number 7 had a bit of a high tide mark, which you can see it's still got, but this bore, for some reason, was very glazed. It was like silky smooth, almost polished. It was just, you could tell that this cylinder, oh, pardon me, this cylinder, for whatever reason, was glazed up. The rest of them weren't too bad. The rest of the compression numbers were, I don't know, I'd call them okay, but all in all, the engine was not fantastic. So I went right up, pull the heads, let's go through this thing, which is what we got. Yeah, it is a standard bore, so this one hasn't been bored. Actually, this one's quite a late model date code. I can't recall exactly. I probably should have looked it up, but there's the code there. So what are we? 0805S. So I believe S puts it somewhere around 2009, I think. I could be wrong. It was either 2003 or 2009. I can't remember. Anyway, it's quite a late model block, and it hadn't done a lot of work. So the bearings were still standard size, the pistons were standard size, the pistons were standard GM pistons. Not to say they couldn't be replaced, but the bottom end didn't look like it had been opened. So yeah, we've come through and I've just given it a good hone. I know number 7's still got some marks in it. You sort of got to be careful with just honing a block. You really don't want to run it too far. I did go through and measure it all with telescopic gauges. The bores aren't tapered, they're not oval, they're in good condition, but if you keep chasing little marks with a hone, you can end up doing more good than harm. More harm than good. You know what I mean? So anyway, we did that, come through and I just tidied up the deck surfaces. The block is flat. I did check that with, we have quite a large flat block, which is machined flat. Put that up against it, and feeler gauges, the block's flat. You can't slide a tooth hour feeler gauge anywhere. Both sides. So to clean up mating surfaces of the blocks, I like to use, to start with, obviously you go through and you scrape it and you get all the crap off. I like to use just a general oil stone, very fine grit oil stone, and it knocks all the little bits and pieces you didn't get, all the gaskets, like any little bits of gasket are left there, it gets rid of them. And it also lets you get a bit of a gauge on highs and lows, because they're not perfectly flat, but they're relatively flat. So if you wipe over that surface, it'll give you a good indication of highs and lows. It'll also show you if there's any little burrs or anything up on any of the edges. And then I go to our flat block and I wrap generally about 800 wet and dry. Wrap that on the flat block and I'll work the surface with the flat block. And then that's the finish you get. Now you can see there's some, so these are where the pre-comp chambers sit, the pre-combustion chambers in the head. Now you can see there's still some discoloration there. They're probably fractionally low, but all the rest of it has got good contact with the block. These would be tenths of thou low, not thou, they'll be tenths of thou. So, and we're using Felpro graphite gaskets, or paper gaskets, sorry, I don't think they're a graphite, they're just a paper gasket. So we're using Felpro gaskets. They will take up that irregularity with no issues. And also where the pre-comp is, they don't seal anyway, the flame ring comes sort of out and around them, so not too worried. Anyway, these are the bits and bobs. Marley rings, Clevite bearings, Felpro head bolts, Felpro gaskets, and then Marley, brand new Marley standard pistons with the heat treated crowns. So yeah, nothing flash. They're quite a nice weighty piston, but yeah, we just got to come through. I'm going to do a final clean up on this engine and we're going to run it together. As you can see, the crankshaft's still in there. The main bearings are in good condition. I actually checked that before I put the engine in. I popped the sump off and checked the bearings. The rod bearings were, runnable. At that point I wasn't doing a rebuild, I was just checking bearings. Rod bearings were runnable and the main bearings were in really good condition. These suckers have got like massive wide main bearings on them, so they're pretty good. The rod bearings, I figured now everything's coming out, I'll just replace them. It was another $100 and something bucks for rod bearings. I'll just do it, and it means I don't have to disturb front rear mains to get the crankshaft out. It means I don't have to pull the timing case off. Anyway, I know the main bearings are fine, and now it'll have brand new rod bearings. It had good oil pressure when I fired it up anyway. At idle, it was sitting at 40-pound oil pressure. It was fine, but anyway, we're here, we're doing it. So yeah, so that's what the bearings are. Bearings are rod bearings, not mains. So yeah. We're going to basically hook in, good final clean of the block, go through and check everything, make sure everything's good, and then we're going to start assembling. We'll put pistons on rods, rings on pistons, and pistons in hole. I don't know, bit of a jump forward, but 8 pistons in 8 holes. None of them cracked, so that's a bonus. I mean, they all went together really good. There's nothing too special to know. I've never built a 6.5 before, but built plenty of other engines, and yeah, there's nothing really to them. You just make sure you get, actually I will flip it and show you one thing. You just make sure that you get your piston orientation correct, and your, so with these, oh, I put the caps on now, but essentially when you have a look at the bearing, have a look at the rod bearing, it doesn't come hard up against the edge of the web. It's recessed on one side. So if you put your rod in, obviously your pistons have to go with the pre-comps, you know, this way. That's just how they sit. But to ensure that your rods are on your pistons the right way, just double check that your bearing, it'll sit offset away from the web. So anyway, me personally, I just did it. I held the rod in my hand facing up, and there is a dot. Well, it's on that side. There is actually a dot on the rod. Personally, I held the dot facing to the left, and then I knew that the piston went on the top and the pre-comps had to face up. That was just how I pulled them off the rods, and that was just what I had in my little memory to put them back together. And anyway, that's how it went. Other than that, obviously check your ring gaps, your bearing clearances, make sure your rings are on the right way. You know, they can be put on upside down, some don't, but physically, generally speaking, they can go on the piston both ways, but 9 times out of 10 there is an actual direction. Normally with a piston ring, if it's got any form of marking, be it paint, be it a dot, be it a little engraved number, letter, whatever, that will go up. Anyway, that's just all very general, you know, very broad stroke brush of how you will find most engines put together. And almost every single engine, I haven't really come across one yet, the piston has an orientation in the bore. Obviously these have one because the pre-comps, and most of them will have them for valve relief, that sort of stuff. Generally speaking, it's got a lot to do with the major and minor thrust faces of the piston. Get a manual, give it a Google, whatever you need to do to ensure you get it the right way round. But unless something physically tells you that it doesn't have a specific orientation, it does. So I'm going to finish chasing the threads for the head bolts, and then we're going to get some cylinder heads on. Heads are on, all the head bolts are torqued, obviously. They're torque to yield bolts, so you know, do them up to a, oh, there we go. That's the instructions that come with it. So yeah, 20, 50, and then do a final torque of 90 degrees, which I detest torque to yield bolts, but I mean, if I had the money, I would have loved to have put some ARPs in it, but you know, we don't all have the money for big builds, unfortunately, as much as I'd like to. It's just not something we can always do. But heads are on. So these heads, I am fortunate enough to have facilities here, so I decked the heads. It only took about 2 thou to get, they really weren't warped as such. It's just something that's nice to be able to do. So anyway, skimmed the heads, got them nice, flat, clean, good surface area, pulled all the valves, relapped all the valve seats, which they were in really good condition. Again, these heads are in really good nick, both of them. So these heads actually aren't the ones that come off this engine though. I brought a second engine, come up cheap, and the heads that were on this engine with the cracked piston, both heads had massive cracks between every valve. These heads, no cracks. So anyway, well worth it buying the second-hand engine. So yeah, I just got to wash the rocker gear up, put that on, and then put the rocker covers back on to the sump, and then I'm pretty much back to where I was when I pulled the engine out. So then we can turn our attention to the engine bay, so then we can turn our attention to the engine bay. I can show you what's going on there, what I've made. There's a fair bit of custom stuff that I've sort of put together for this. Just, I don't know, I like doing things a little bit different here and there. So yeah, and we'll run it. Hopefully we can get this thing back together fairly soon. Still a lot of work to go on the car to get it to a point where I can turn the key and physically drive the car. But I have a date with a dyno. It's, you know, a little bit down the track, but not much. So I need to get this in, running, and dyno worthy. Not so much full, you know, all the bar work and lights and everything back on, but this engine needs to be in. I need to have a little bit of runtime on it so that I'm confident that it'll be fine on the dyno. And then that's what's happening. So you won't see it in this episode, but next episode will be the GQ with this engine up on the dyno. So I'm still waiting on a few parts. I've got brand new marine injectors coming and also a brand new water pump. The old one was pretty shot and the injectors were shot. So that failure on the piston on number 3, which would be there, that was more than likely due to a failed injector overheating that one cylinder. Now, funny thing was, I went and tested them and there was only 3 injectors that even had remotely close to a spray pattern. Everything else was just dribbly or wouldn't hold crack pressure or didn't crack properly and certainly didn't spray properly. So I'm surprised there's not more busted pistons. Anyway, yeah, we'll keep going. And like I said, rocker gear, rocker covers, sump. Then we'll have a good look at the engine bay and I'll show you what we're going to get done in there. So yeah, engine more or less back together as a, you know, full long block, sumps on. Rocker covers still aren't on. I'm not sure if I showed that in the last shot or not. This is a turbo setup. So went for a mid-mount turbo. I just, in the Patrol, there's not a great deal of room in there, to be honest. So having them, I mean, most people have them up on the passenger side. I don't know. I just like the mid-mount. I also don't like crossover pipes personally, but I mean, they work. I just don't like them. So anyway, that's up there, and I've got a top mount intercooler that the turbo feeds. Actually sits more like that, and there's an elbow that goes straight into a big top mount. You'll see that later when it's all back in the car. I'm a little bit snookered on parts at the moment, so I'm waiting on injectors, like I said, but also I've just ordered some heat wrap for the exhaust, or for the header section anyway. These sit really close to the engine block and fairly close to the firewall, so that's all got to get wrapped. And also I'm going to drill and tap and put a fitting in to run a drive pressure gauge. A lot of people say that these Garrett turbos suffer, or they cause issues because they suffer from a high drive pressure ratio. Really basic terms, whatever boost pressure you're seeing inside the engine, be that, you know, positive, I don't know, 10 psi worth of boost pressure, the drive pressure ratio is how much pressure is built up in the manifold in order to achieve the pressure coming out into the engine. The manifold will be at positive pressure. Now, the lower that can be for the higher boost in the manifold, the better. If you have more than a 1-to-1 drive pressure ratio, you start getting, basically things get backed up inside the engine. You can start getting higher cylinder pressures because of it, a lot higher temperature in the manifolds, that sort of stuff. Now, I don't know what sort of drive pressure ratios these run because I haven't seen any actual facts and figures. People just say that they have an issue with being a high ratio. Now, a lot of that has to do with your turbine geometry and your exhaust housing. So we'll see. I'm going to put a gauge in and I actually want to measure it. So who knows? Could be off the charts. Could be 0.7. Like I said, anything more than greater than 1-to-1. So, you know, 10 psi in the engine, 10 psi in the exhaust manifold. Anything greater than that is less than ideal. Anything less than that, you know, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9 is on the happier scale. So anyway, let's take a look at the engine bay and we'll see what we're going to do in there. Okie dokie. So, not sure where to start here, to be honest. Alright, because of the way the turbo is situated, the intake of the turbo is on this side, so the battery has to move. Now, 2 options. The battery either goes in the back, which this car already had dual batteries, and the second one was in the back, behind the back seats. So there was actually 2 of them back there, so I can run a starter and an auxiliary. All the wiring's already back there. Highly likely that's what I'm going to do. I'll remove the engine bay, move the battery from the engine bay completely, and we'll just run big heavy gauge wiring up to the starter and up to a positive terminal lug somewhere in the bay and go from there. So the battery tray will come out and an air filter would actually, I've got a large Donaldson style canister doohickey thing, you'll see it later. It'll sit on this side. So we're still going to get the battery box out. Now, because of my wants more so than needs, I had to cut, I think I'm shadowing it, there we go. I had to cut a rather large hole in the firewall or in the passenger's footwell, in order to get my 4-inch dump pipe down there. Do I need a 4-inch dump pipe? No, not really. Do I want one? Absolutely. So that's what we've done. I did have to cut and shut. Again, sorry, shadows a little bit, but I had to move the engine mounts. So I cut them from where they were. They were sort of back here somewhere for the RB. Cut them off, rejiggered them and plated them, made the solid steel blocks and moved them forward, and then replated the top and the sides. Same with that side as well. So it's got 6mm plate across the top, reinforced the sides, and then yeah, that's the block there that the actual engine saddle of the engine mount goes over. Other than that, not much has changed. The power steering still sits essentially, or the steering box obviously sits essentially where it was, and the lines come around this side because the power steering pumps on that side of the engine, which is fine. Aircon and radiator are all sort of custom, because that's just what happens when you start mucking with a project of this size. But yeah, really the big issue is that hole. So I've made, oh actually, there it is there. Took me a little bit of mucking around, but that's the little infill panel that goes in that hole. That way, that way. So anyway, that's my next job. I'm going to drag the welder over, prep all that up, and we're going to tack it all in and hopefully not set fire to any of the carpet that's on the inside. Oh, time for an update, I guess. So, engine bay is a bit further along. Gearbox is back in, patched up. I'll put the patch in the floor over there. I'm going to give that another coat of sound deadener. The big hole there is the aircon drain, and then the one next to it, there was a grommet in it, so that'll go back. Battery tray is gone and tidied up, and then that's just a bit of pressure pack sound deadener, so just to prevent rust. And yeah, I think I really wanted to actually try and color code this engine bay back up, but I think what might be a better option, because this will still be, you know, well and truly in the bush 4-wheel drive, is I might run a line and do sort of up to the top of the guards, and then where this seam is on the firewall, I think we're going to do from there down, including the inner guards, all in underbody deadener, just to A, make it all one color, but B, make it a little bit more bush proof and, you know, rust preventative and whatnot. Got to put headlights back in. Yeah, so the gearbox itself is back in. Obviously there's a bit of bar there to stop it swinging down, but we started to turn our attention to the inside and getting some wiring sorted. So this car was petrol, as I stated. Now it also ran a full aftermarket Wolf ECU, and it was wired into just about everything. So I mean, there was, you know, massive amounts of stuff up with the ignition barrel. There was also an old anti-theft, what do you call it, bloody alarm. Wow, brain's not working today. That was, again, sorry, wired into, like an immobilizer, wired into the key. So that's all got cut out. There was a lot of wiring running in behind the dash. Now this car was set up quite well by the guy that built it to start with, but it's been through a couple of hands and people have had their way with it. Now we're moving the batteries to the back. There's already a spot here for 2 batteries, which is what he had running, and I'm sure when this was done it made a lot of sense. So what there actually was 2 batteries back here, which were his secondary deep cycle batteries, and then in the engine bay there was actually 2 batteries. So there was a crank, or they were set up as 2 cranks. So we had multiple isolators back here. This has all been put in by someone else as well. It's just, it probably made sense when it was done, but for our application everything's getting changed. I'm going to have a big cranking battery here and then a deep cycle there. Just a standard AGM deep cycle. I mean, hey, I'd love lithium, but unless someone wants to donate one, that's not happening. I mean, I've already got a red arc DC to DC charger there, and we've got a solar controller there. I mean, it's only a King's inverter, but there's a 1500 watt inverter. So this will all get completely redone. This board will disappear. It's just taken up room that doesn't need to be taken up. and we'll basically get to it. Everything's coming out. We need to run one dirty big cable, which we already have, thankfully, because a lot of this, well, not that, but a lot of this big heavy cable, this heavy cable here, more than big enough to run up the front for a starter cable. So yeah, and he's already got really good grounds back here as well, so the chassis will be grounded really well, and then we'll run another one, sorry, the body's grounded really well, and then we're going to run another one from the body to the chassis, just to make sure everything is all grounded properly. Grounds are one of those things that people tend to overlook a little bit, but they are very important. So yeah, like I said, there's plenty of big cable here to do that, and the quickest way to get it done is just to rip it out and start again. As I said, it probably worked very well for what he did, but for our intent, like our purpose of what we're doing, she's all getting changed. Yeah, gear sticks are back in, and yeah, we've basically just got to work our way through all the wiring now. I dropped the fuel tank, cleaned that. It's not back in yet, it's sitting outside. This did have direct injected gas as well, so it had a gas tank and everything. That's all gone now, and we're just working our way through it. So yeah, I'll bring you back when there's a little bit more progress. All right, well, brace yourself. How about them apples? That is a substantial improvement. I was going to leave the big hold down bracket that was in there, but it just doesn't need to be there. There are holes in the floor, so I'll reuse them for putting my battery clamps on. I might put some threaded bar on the back, and then I'll probably put a nut cert in the front so I can run a bolt down. But that was just it. Anyway, this is going to work so much better. There was just a lot of stuff in there that for my setup I'm not using. Yeah, so we'll have main battery on this side, and I'll run a dedicated power and a dedicated ground up the front, and then we'll earth body and chassis from there up the front at the engine, and then I'll have my second battery over there, and basically the red arc will probably go in the middle, and then a few other bits and pieces will go on, and then that's it. I have miles of room down in here to put the inverter back in. There was one amplifier in here that was running all the speakers. I will put a decent sound system in this car. I do like having a good sound system, but really it's the least of my worries at the moment. So we're going to have cranking, auxiliary, red arc, a few other bits and bobs, and then that's it. We have made, I also vacuumed in there too because it was starting to really annoy me. Oh, not a great deal's changed in here, I guess. We have made a bit of progress, so we're running, where are we there? So at the moment, we've got some of our lights back on the dash. We're running just a battery out the front, so we can try and troubleshoot a whole heap of this stuff and find out what's what and where it's going. But yeah, I'm gonna set to work and get my two batteries in here. I'll probably do the auxiliary battery and then run my big heavy cables down. I'm gonna run them outside. They're just too big and beefy to run inside, and they've got to come through the firewall anyway, so might as well put them through the floor here and run them. So let's get to work with that. All right, well, we're going to end it here. Engine's back in for the final time, for the first time, for the final time. Clutch works, which was the bigger sort of issue. I didn't know if we'd have to pull it back out again to change pivot points or whatnot. Clutch feels like it works, so that's a win. All the exhaust has been all heat wrapped up the back, and it's all on properly now, so it's got all the manifold seal and everything on. Still don't have injectors, and still don't have a water pump, so there's not much more I can do with that. Dad's been working hard getting the wiring harness together, which doesn't consist of a lot, but it's still a decent job. Yeah, there's lots of other stuff. Can't put the manifold on until the injectors are in, because the injector lines go under it. Well, these have got to come off, we've got to redo a bit of this stuff, but yeah, it's in, on its mounts, and bolted to the gearbox properly. The rear diff is out because I'm changing ratios. That's a 4:3 ratio, and I'm putting 3 9s in it to suit the RPM of the engine. In here, saw it was empty, and focus, thank you. So yeah, so we've got a new battery in. Technically that's an a deep cycle battery, but it's also got 780 cold cranking amps. So for the moment, that's going to run as the cranking, and then I do have another one for the dual battery. So they'll both fit in there without any drama. And the only things that'll be in there will be the red arc, the solar controller, and one little fuse distribution setup to send power to a few different bits and pieces. That's it. Majorly simplified. It'll get a bit bigger when I go to put a bit more stuff in, but yeah. Other things, fuel tank's been cleaned, it's back in. The fuel pump is back on. Oh, sorry, the new fuel pump. I got a Carter lift pump to feed the engine, to feed the main pump. Yeah, lots of little stuff. Lots and lots of little stuff. The main heavy battery cables are now fully run. So, yeah, really, there's still a lot. Don't want to oversimplify it, but once I get my water pump and injectors, the engine can go completely together. The radiator and all the piping for that's already done. And yeah, it's just work way down the list then. So, all right, next episode, it will run. I'm not going to promise the dyno, because if my parts don't turn up in time, then I miss the dyno session. So at some point it will get on the dyno, but it just may not be for the next video. So, but it will definitely be running and driving in the next video. So yeah, stick around for that. Anyway, give it a like if you want, and yeah, stay safe. We'll catch you on the next one.